Thank you, Mbak Leonie, and yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's me again. I would like to start our event today by briefly explaining our initiative to organize several activities since more or less we start with the first lecture series sometimes in September last year. So while we wait Pak Neville to activate the screen, this is our initiative together between the Department of Urban and Regional Planning with our colleague, Pak Neville from the Mars Architect. We have been working for quite some time. Yeah, Pak Neville, it has been a pleasure to working together with you. Also with my colleague, he will join us soon, Pak Ruku. So we organized the epoch with the beginning. We start with the lecture series. Later on, Pak Neville will explain more about that and invite all students and young professionals to develop ideas on how we see this new capital in Borneo. If you see in the middle, it looks like in the middle of nowhere in terms of number of populations, as we see all the dense urban area mostly located in Java Island, if you look a little bit down, and in other surrounding regions. So we encourage students and young professionals to have innovation on how we can combine nature and at the same time maintaining the development, including the economic activity, and how we can focusing on not only certain spots, but also try to understand and to think in the regional level. So yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So basically we give the students a particular delineation. It looks, if we see in the broader scales, it looks like not really many things happen there, but if we have a closer look, we see there's people live there, the local people for sure, and also a very important role for the forest, the greenery functions to keep the balance between environment and how it can go in harmony with the economic activities and also the importance role of the local community as well. So yeah, this is the area of our competitions I'm happy to announce later on. Yeah, we already have some registered participants and from different background and also different countries and university across the globe. Next, please. Yeah, so basically if you see here, we would like to combine between how we think the macro, meso, and micro level on this. And I think with this, I can pass to Pak Neville to give more ideas on how we further proceed with the competition. Please, Pak Neville.
Thank you, Provoost. Yeah, just to very briefly summarize what the mission was for this competition. There are several projects around the world that aim to do a new town, that aim to do even a new capital, but very few have set out to incorporate the larger ecological surroundings. And not just that, but even create an entire forest almost from scratch. So our very first instinct was, okay, finally as planners, we get an opportunity to talk about land use. That's the one topic that is so often overlooked, and it is so important. It's not just about nice buildings or even smart urban systems. It is ultimately about land use, about the larger region. That was a unique opportunity, and it generated a truly diverse a number of entries from around 30 countries and even more universities. And this diversity is critical. There is no silver bullet, as we already saw in the questionnaire, in the survey with the audience. It's a very complex matter. All the experts will agree on that. The complexity must be addressed in what I would call an ecology of solutions. So not one solution, not even many solutions, but many solutions that begin to work together and allow themselves to evolve over time. So that generates something rather fuzzy and messy, and the process is fuzzy and messy. So we brought in a really crack team of international experts that were to make sense of all these introductions to the future of IKN in 2045, with a specific focus on the landscape development, on the agronomy and the permaculture. How can this new vision that will be central to this discussion, IKN as a forest city, how can that become an actual urban model? The fact that it's hard to answer made it almost impossible not to do this competition and not to do this event today. I won't go into detail. I want to highlight two people here who spent an insane amount of time delving into each intricate detail. That is Pedro Camarena and Arief here on the right of Indo Bamboo. That was just truly remarkable. If you're online, thank you again. And thank you to all the jury members. So without further ado, we will start with the announcement of the honorable mentions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe Mbak Leonie, can you give the honorable mention envelope? And thank you very much. And I would like to invite Bu Mirna, the representative from the authority. Maybe you can open the big envelope. And the winner is, please.
Bu harus berdiri.
Ya, ini untuk ada honorable mention, jadi ada disebutkan semua aja. Bu, mungkin langsung ke sini aja supaya nggak terlalu panjang. Oke, ini the title ya, or lead by, supaya nggak terlalu panjang.
Okay. Yes, I think it's a very, if I look at the title, it's very, very interesting. Yeah, if I was part of the team of the jury, it seems that difficult to decide who will be the winner, but finally the decision already taken, and I can read from this envelope here that the titles are first, Big Bang Planning. The team is from Kyoto University of the Arts, Osaka Electric Communication University, Yamagata University Architecture, Meiji University, Kokushikan University, National Institute of Technology, Kyoto Architectural Super College of Design, and Kanagawa University. And the next winner is with the title Wildscape Living Nexus from Universitas Gadjah Mada.
Yeah, we have maybe later on we can invite them to give the certificate later on.
And next is with the title Interweaving Forests Within the City, Proclaiming Nature and Wilderness Connections amidst expanded urbanity of New Capital City at Borneo, University of Sheffield, Tan Studio, Royal Horticulture Society, the Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. Okay, and then also on the list is learning from Dayak tribe living urban planning, aiming for a sustainable city where a tradition and modernity coexist, Kanagawa University. And next is Nusantara Aspiration, Urban Forest Mutualism, China Construction 8 Engineering Bureau Second Construction. And also the last one is Urban Canopy, the City of the Forest, Xi'an Jiatong Liverpool University, Sichuan University of Media and Communications, Kunming University of Science and Technology.
Thank you, Ibu. Yeah, it's quite not really balanced in terms of the geography, the location of the winner. We invite, I know the representative from Gajah Mada and also from China. Please, maybe the representative can get the certificate. Yeah, Prof. Bambang, do you mind if Bu Mirna? Okay, okay.
Sorry nggak ikut nih. Malu. Orang dalam.
Thank you. And for the next, where is Mbak Leonie with the envelope? Yeah. Okay. I would like to kindly invite Prof. Bambang, if you don't mind, to announce the third, second, and the first winner. Langsung diborong, Bapak. Mohon maaf, mohon izin.
Okay, the drum raffle is on. Let's start with the third winner.
Yeah.
Oh, right there already. Team 150, the School of Architecture at Southeast University. The title is Tidal City Nusantara, Growing from the Forest. So please have a round of applause.
Yeah, so this is the representative, yeah, from, okay. And
okay, that's the team. Wow,
yeah.
okay.
Thanks.
Congratulations for the third winner,
Yeah.
second winner. Tibet University, Beijing University of Civil Engineering and Architectures, Zhejiang ANF University at Hunan. The title is Emerald Nusantara. I think you can also see the exhibitions upstairs.
Yeah.
After this, so whenever you have a time, please go up. Just 1 floor.
Yeah.
Exercise before the breaking the puasa. Yeah. So congratulations for the team number 10.
Okay. Thank you.
Now here it is. The one who collect also the money, yeah? The first winner.
Oh yeah, we should
Except the jury.
mention the prize, Pak Neville, for only the first, second.
The second one has 3,000. The third one has 1,000. And this one has
6,000.
Nah, lumayan kan? Hampir 100 juta kalau di Indonesia sekarang.
6,000.
Pak Joris, please have a seat. OTW tadi ya, on the way. So the winner is Team 300, University of College London and Diponegoro University.
No. Yeah.
Ini benar ya?
Yeah, but
we are announcing ourselves.
Part of the jury, Pak, so you can.
In the defense of change Benoa Taka, a just, independent, smart forest city development that defends and evolves the symbiome of Borneo. So congratulations, UCL London and also Diponegoro University.
Can we increase the volume? Yeah. Pak Neville, because this is from your...
Hi, I'm Dita. I'm part of this team and a geospatial data scientist.
Can you
Spatial
follow
science
me
from
to be
University College London. As a spatial analyst, I ensure all vision is built on
somebody
accurate
wants
and
to start
relevant
again?
data. By mapping concessions, land use, population growth, and indigenous villages, we took a data-driven approach to sustainable planning, ensuring Benua Taka is not just a forest city, but one that grows with its land and people.
Hi, I'm Pedro. I'm with this team. Integrate specializing in sustainable working that's graduated from architecture management at Monterrey University. In this collaborative competition project, we developing sustainable community-centric planning and policy solutions that minimize the ecological footprint and also enhance the building using modular green-steel structure. We critique a forest concept that integrates mid-rise and single modular housing.
Hi, I'm Handayani, urban designer graduated from the University of London. In team, my role is to ensure that all our strategy, principal plans, use Provoost design concepts, moving with the key stakeholders from the authority levels to city communities and forest dwellers align with the aim to achieve Benua Taka for a city's vision.
Yeah, applause for our first winner who will get $6,000 US, yeah, Pak Neville, right? 6,000.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so with this, I would like to invite Pak Neville again to continue our event today.
Great. Congratulations to all the teams. So for this afternoon, and please, Bagyoris, join us. The mission is to kind of distill what we can learn from these projects. Again, it is an ecology of solutions, which means that there is no silver bullet, but there's a lot to learn from the first, second, and third prize, but also from the honorable mentions. So I would invite everybody to check online and see that. We started this project, and now I come to you, Babama, about 9 months ago, when we attended a dinner presentation where you introduced, at least to me, the first time, this idea of a forest city. And it really kind of landed with me. It stuck with me as something truly radical and important. Radical, certainly from an urban planning standpoint, because that concept doesn't exist yet. And it was, in my mind, exactly the right idea that IKN should embrace in order to kind of reinvigorate itself in the current difficult climate. The traditional notion of a forest city is more like this is Manaus in Brazil, where the city generally works against the forest. It eats the forest up. And you presented this notion of a city that would generate new forest from a landscape that is still quite impoverished. So the exact opposite, and that makes it something that we all believe needs to be explored and given a meaning to. And later on, I will ask you this question: what do you think is indeed the definition or the understanding or the deeper meaning of a forest city? Before we ask you, we've asked a long list of truly prominent global thinkers, speakers, urban planners. They collaborated in this ongoing lecture series that is fully available for free online as well. If you scan the QR, you will get there. It presented, at least to me, the unflinching idea that it is a multifaceted problem that needs multifaceted solutions. There is no single discipline that can actually address this. If you think you're coming from spatial planning and that's a solution, you bring only a small part to the table. And indeed, we need to bring all these aspects together and figure out how they can work together. That lecture series was rich, and I invite you to visit it and see all the talks. I'm going to fast forward here because we are a little bit late in the program, but this is some of the speakers that presented their ideas, going from urban mobility to resilience to urban financing by Bakioris. The core question remained somewhat unanswered, and that's why I feel the competition was a critical component to get us closer to the central question today: what is for a city, and how do you achieve it here? This background is indeed in IKN Nusantara. It is a somewhat artificial background. You see green and you see plastic and you see construction. That is kind of the traditional notion of the hybrid between nature and man-made habitats. It's very artificial. It's very much construed. What I think the best teams have been able to do is show us that there is a much more organic, much more natural way forward. So a radical concept indeed of reforestation. So it's actually not Nusantara as forest city, but Nusantara as a forest generating city. And the second question why I do believe that no matter what the current climate is and the obstacles we'll face, some of them we'll address today, at the end of the day, there is a city already built there, and that city is an evolving, complex entity, meaning that it will keep on evolving no matter what we do. But if we take charge, we can guide that process. That's at least my take, and that's how we frame the competition. And many of the teams have really cleverly picked up on that. I'll rush through it so we get to the debate. But essentially, all the teams, especially the Team 3 and Team 2, have applied, let's say, the most advanced, they're both Chinese teams, the most advanced ecosystem thinking, which is very much a sort of a 15-minute city logic, clusters around mobility, and in this case also really cleverly orchestrated around hydrology and natural systems. So it is still the binary nature city. It is not yet that a full fusion. It is, however, rather beautiful. Here you see those islands, making it walkable, making it bikeable, and then, of course, you get to the center of it with public transit. What was very impressive about the third prize is that they went into great detail and great care to analyze, understand, and respond to the hydrology, to the water systems in this landscape, which is a very dynamic system that can work against you, meaning flooding and drought, or can work with you, where you can actually apply that water for your permaculture. You do recognize, I certainly do, after 22 years in China, I recognize some of the typologies, the high rise that we see. That's a brilliantly effective tool to achieve density. That brings us to the second runner-up. I really love this project, also a Chinese project, but they moved away from high rise, and it moves closer to an integrated scheme of nature, here in sort of blurred green, permaculture, feeding the city here in these patches, very close to the city, food almost at your doorstep, and then small-scale, dense but low-rise communities. If you see below here, I think we'll get to that in a minute, they very much a data-driven team, looking at GIS, looking at even some machine learning to figure out what the best configuration for this topography would be. Beautiful. Really, really spectacular. That brings us to the finalists and what the jury, and I will admit also, I will mix in my own opinions, considered about this team. It's very interesting, and I'm very, very glad that this kind of percolated. It's a rather humble scheme. It's not the first scheme you see when you would walk through all these proposals. But it's a very intelligent scheme that almost forgoes design, where the other two still propose kind of static plan, still think in terms of master planning, think in terms of neighborhoods with a fixed form. This one is purely data-driven, purely GIS-driven, and moves much closer to the idea of the city as an organic entity, a self-evolving entity, or dare I say, a complex adaptive system. I'm truly impressed with the jury that they picked this, because the presentation is complex and very, very small font. And to be very frank with you, some parts, including the architecture, is below par. Here you see this building, it's not good. And yet we picked it. And I think that's great. Finally, all of us here, urban planners, should take our stake in the room. It's about planning first. It's about urbanism. It's about urban design. Let the architects figure it out when we are done. So I'm truly honored and pleased that this was ignored and we kind of stepped over this little blotch in the proposal. Here you see some of the schemes up close. It is really clever. It is really topography and culture driven. So with that, I would like to kind of get to, well, we skipped the Mentimeter. I would like to kind of get started with the debate. All these terms that we tend to use are poorly defined. I would go as far as to say they lack real scientific definition, Pak Bambang. As we move forward in urban planning, and especially with Nusantara as a sustainable environment, I think we need to start defining these terms. We need to start, even if they're blurry at first, which is a strategy China used very effectively. You throw out a big concept and then let the academics figure out what it really means. It's a brilliant idea and it actually works. But what does it mean? What is the forest city in your most intuitive initial conception?
So I'm in a house seat now? No, I don't think so. First of all, I would like to congratulate and also thanks all the organizer of these competitions. I remember at one point Earl Nightingale saying that everything begins with ideas, right? So that this is one of the knowledge exercise for me. This is one of the academic exercise that hopefully somebody will pick it up later on. But we don't know at this point. Yeah. When I see the finalists of the design competition, I feel that sorry to say, all of them are stop shorts on one thing, because my challenge to the 1 year ago when we met Neville and also a couple of the visitors to IKN at the time, I challenged them on how a city be designed to foster the harmony between nature and humans. I have my two colleagues here. They are one of the superb kind of, staff, professional staff in IKN, Ibu Mia Amalia on the online, and also Ibu Mirna Safitri. I still remember, Ibu Mirna, that at one point we issued at the time, okay, a guideline for the workers on how to live with the wildlife. Why? Because at the time there are workers. Because of the very hot weather, they jump to the river and they disappear. Because there are so many crocodile there. The real crocodile, not buaya darat, yeah. The real crocodile. So what happened, for example, if in the morning we jogging and then there is a snake in our path? How do a design will adapt to that kind of situations? this is not an ordinary forest. This is a tropical forest, and this is the wild forest with the wildlife. We have beruang madu, sunbear, yeah? We have a lot of also, some of them is orangutan, yeah, orangutan. Of course, in some part of the infrastructure, they built what they call the wildlife crossing. Yeah, in the toll road, for example, they accommodate the movement of the wildlife. But what I'm talking about is on the housing complex itself, on the city itself. Yeah, this is a city in the forest, and the forest in the city. Yeah, and as Neville pointed out, city is very complex matter. It's an arena of conflict. Yeah, I remember one of the book by Kevin Lynch saying that one, where all the interests are coming. So it goes beyond just the urban planner thinking for me. This is also something that they have to also talking and also have some discussion with anthropologists, with the sociologists, with the urban economists, even with the gender specialists and so on and so forth. Yeah. But going back again, what is a forest city? That is something that we have to coin. Yeah. The word reforestation, for example, this is kind of new for me also. How can we make some reforestations in the area of, abandoned coal mining, for example? That is many on that area. Also, how we, how long it will take to have really our biodiversity coming in the forest that we can proud of, for example. And gladly that we have the, roadmap for that. Yeah, we have a roadmap for biodiversity. Ibu Mirna is the champion of that. We have, a roadmap for climate change, although Donald Trump doesn't like it. We have also voluntary local review for the SDGs, yeah, that now is being reviewed with a new name. We don't know after 2030 what's going to be the name after MDG, SDGs, and then something else. But this is a really new ideas that may or may not become reality, to be honest, right? Because we talk about 20 years from now, 2045. There will be, some off track, some on track again, some off track again. Maybe we have to also compromise with the nature. I hope that we are not compromising with the politics, but more on the nature and culture. That will be something that we are trying to have the equilibrium on those forces that are happening right now. But the main basic tenets will be a combination between people, nature, and culture. Yeah. Those are things that we'd like to see, not only on the conceptual thing, but on the day-to-day things, right? We have, for example, the guideline on how we should, do in terms of dealing with the encountering the wildlife, how we will adapt to that one, yeah, and how, for example, that is combined with the digital technology, for example, the smart city concept. This is very interesting. On one hand, you go green. On the other one, you have smart. On the other hand, you also have to honor the local culture and local wisdom. Mm-hmm. That's something that, for me is iterations. You must have a good balance of it. And hopefully with that kind of things, we will find the way on how we will develop in the next 20 years. Remember, this is a long-term undertaking until 2045. I pause there, Neville.
Thank you, Pak Bama. No, that was very insightful. And very helpful for me because it brings me straight to the second main question. But first, what strikes me is that you're uncannily realistic in your approach to this project. And again, certainly coming from China, that's something I'm not used to because there the sky is always blue. And it's very refreshing, and I really appreciate that. helping me to immediately lead into one of the key questions for the local community in relation to the local ecology. And allow me, Ibu Mirna, to kind of ask you this question. There is a contradiction in these two facets. We rely so heavily on local communities to adopt and embrace and support local ecologies, but at the same time, we can't give them, or at least relinquish all responsibility. The central government and local governments have a strong responsibility to somehow support and guide them. How do we strike the right balance between, let's say, central and local mandate for the community and the ecology?
Yes, I think before I respond to your questions, I just want to ask everybody here to think again about the term local community, because perhaps we will have different understanding about the local community. Sometimes we, as the one who live in the big city like in Jakarta or other city in Java, understand that everyone in Borneo is a local community. Yeah, but the fact that the location that now being IKN from long time ago is a multicultural society. I'm from there. My hometown is in Samarinda, and I think I'm the witness how the process of the multiculturalism happened in those areas. So the word local, I think we need to be critical, right? So I work for advocating the rights of the indigenous peoples in Indonesia when I was young until today even, and sometimes I find that the definitions of the local is like something that is constructed by the NGOs or the academicians, not fully refer to the situation, the real situation. So back to the IKN area, we have identified about the ethnic groups living in IKN there, and there are a lot of ethnic groups. And then from those ethnic groups, we right now can say that there are some that living earlier than the other, and the ones who living earlier can be said as representative from the Pasir, from Kutai, and then several sub tribe of Dayak. So not all Dayak basically living in those areas. And again, I understand that these very small groups have their culture in the past, and we as the anthropologists and also environmentalists understand that the culture is very important factor to support the effort of the environmental protection. So in IKN, we realized that we need to recognize the culture, but at some point, we also need to, in quotation, looking for the strategy to revitalize the culture and even to recreate perhaps the new culture to respond for the idea of the forest city, because the so-called local here basically already disconnected from the nature. They live as the workers of the palm oil, of the mining concession, etc. So we need also to ask them to make the new dream of living with the nature. So that is, I think, the big challenge right now. And if we look at what is the fair role of the local and also the other stakeholders, I prefer to use the other stakeholders because there are a lot of stakeholders actually. First, that we need to help the local communities to make them pride with their original culture. That is number one. And then the second one, we also need to help them in restoring the existing ecosystem that already degraded. That's happened in Indonesia, basically. The national policy even that want to recognize the rights of the indigenous people on the degraded ecosystem. And I think that is not fair for them. So the government need to restore the ecosystem in order to make these people can do revitalization of their culture. And also, we also need to protect their knowledge. We need to develop a program that make them can recreate their knowledge, and we protect that knowledge. And in the process of developing the knowledge, we also need to make them open to the new technology. So that is, it's like the role play. That's not easy. I understand, but is important. And again, I don't want to make us being too romantic to the word local community, because there are a lot of problem there, and then we need to set up a very strategic way to help them being the genuine key actors in protecting the ecology.
That's crystal clear. Thank you so much. In this environment of the Erasmus House, we can be very outspoken and indeed critical. I do have a follow-up question that's initially intended for Pak Joris, but I'd like to pose it to you as well. The model you describe, I think that's spot on, but is there, let's say, a financial model to back that up? Can local communities survive from a new, more land-oriented lifestyle?
Right now, they are very land-oriented. If we talk with them, so everything should be related to land, because they need the government to recognize the land, and then what is the purpose of that recognition? To sell the land. That is the fact right now. So that's why gradually we try to make them understand that we still have another asset rather than just rely on the land, and knowledge is the asset. Yeah. In IKN we have the cluster, the industrial cluster, yeah, including the ecotourism, including the integrated pharmacology. So that kind of industry need knowledge. So that's why we want to make the local communities believe that knowledge in the future, in the next 20 years, is the real asset of them.
Maybe very briefly, I'm not letting you go yet. Is there a case study that we can refer to where you feel that has been done successfully?
About what?
Where you see this new model for local communities to, let's say, refine their role with the natural landscape and actually capitalize on that?
I cannot say that the case is successful, because we just started with this project. Right now, we just doing the inventory of all the cultural assets of the local community. So this is the ongoing, yes, ongoing project.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's zoom out a little bit. Think more macro, think more theory, think more abstractions, where I'm more comfortable myself. I think we should start with you, Pak Steven, if you don't mind. You can see the question, the direction I'm heading, right? The very foundation of Nusantara is that of a new town planned in great isolation. And one of our early slides with the ring shows about 1,000 kilometers in any direction from centers of real urban gravity. That model historically, as we heard also in our lecture series, is fraught with challenges. Can we kind of think our way out, plan our way out of the conundrums and the problems stuck with the new town model?
Thanks a lot. My ears also perked up when you said theory and abstraction. So excuse me, I'm an academic. Does it work? what I had prepared to say is already changed because the discussion is already quite dynamic, I think. The Newtown question is super important and not that unusual. So I would say it will be the norm. For those of you who are in urban planning lectures, urban design lectures, you must have heard this hundreds of times, but the current world population will be added to by another 2 billion people. Probably the next 20, 30 years, a big chunk of that will be added, and by the end of the century for sure. So that's a very large number of people. The second thing we know is that most of that additional population will be urban, and most of those cities had not yet been built. Existing cities will accommodate many, and Jakarta is I think one of the world's worst examples of simply growing and growing and growing. So it's simply accommodating people. I love Jakarta, by the way, and I also call my home Jakarta now, so it's one of my favorite cities. But from a theoretical point of view, we cannot see the mega cityfication as one of the big responses to this 2 billion story. So the second model will, of course, is new towns and new cities. So the construction of new towns and new cities will become the norm. It has not been the norm because the growth of populations has been fast, but not as fast as it will be between now and the end of the century. So beside career advice, anybody in planning urban design, I recommend your children to start thinking about those programs because there's a huge amount of work to happen. So IKN as a new town is unique for its administrative, symbolic, national capital status, but as a new town, there's new techniques here that will be exportable all around the world. So again, sidebar, from a career point of view, I guarantee that knowledge assembled for IKN will be exportable information and knowledge in the same way that Singapore is now exporting its knowledge, which was developed from the 70s and 80s and 90s and continues to do so. So I think that's a very interesting knowledge transfer economic sort of story. So the first thing to say is that the new towns are not unusual, and there'll be more and more new towns. Not only new towns, some retrofitted towns, some improved towns, as well as brand new cities. So the debates which are being had now will be happening more and more regularly, I think. I've got just two specific things to say. One with regard to this particular new town. The first is very negative, and that is it's simply unachievable, the question that's put before us. There are two main numbers that we can look at. The first number is the physical footprint of the city itself. And we can manage that number by narrowing the physical footprint and going high. And you've already mentioned this through the different approaches from the competition entries. The higher you go, the more expensive and more complicated and more concrete, the more steel, the more carbon emissions there are. So there's a limit to Singapore's high-rise, high-density model. Some of the other models that you presented here, I think, are more interesting in a way. But nonetheless, that's only a small part of the story. The physical footprint is not the main story. The main game is the life of the city. It's the ecological footprint. It's the food, the energy, the water, and the waste that will be generated by the people who live in the city for the next 50, 70, 100 years. That's where the bulk of the consumption will happen. Now I'm moving to something I've prepared because we're working a little bit on this. So I've got a little bit of data that shows if the population of IKN will be middle class, which it probably will be, bureaucrats and government agencies, for example, they and their families will be living in a middle class consumption model. It's quite different to the kampung model or the rural model in Indonesia. So they will be consuming a lot of their food from the region, but they'll also be consuming meat from Australia, probably edam from the Netherlands. So there'll be an extended footprint and a local footprint as well. So one of the big challenges will be the performance of the city, the life of the city beyond the physical fabric of the city. So that's often called the metabolism of the city, for example. So we're designing the city and we're designing the metabolism. That's, of course, beyond our scope. It's the middle-class consumers who will be consuming food and energy and water and so on. But nonetheless, we can roughly predict what that consumption model will be. So there's two things we can do about that. One would be to produce more of that food and water locally in situ. That's what the current ecological planning approaches suggest. That's what they recommend. If we were to do that, we would demolish most of the forest between Samarinda and Balikpapan. So it's a very large physical footprint. If you wanted to grow the rice and grow all the kind of crops and the food in that region, if you wanted to kind of keep consuming from Australia and cheese from the Netherlands, then that's a global footprint that would be added to that. So I'm a little bit disheartened by that, and I'm an architect as well, so I appreciate very much the drawings, but we have to bring better quality calculations if we're going to be serious about the concepts on the table. I have one short, more positive thing, and I very modestly propose this. Indonesia, there are four big concepts of city that I think we probably know about, three of them, and I want to add a fourth one. And what's interesting that three of them are already from Indonesia. So I'm making I think Dr. Mirna's point is very beautifully made. So the first one is metropolitan, and we all know what that means. Greek, mother city. So Ibu Kota is a direct translation of the metropolitan. The second one that is being developed very beautifully in Indonesia from an American academic called agropolitan. And we know that already. Again, a lot of Indonesian government bureaucracies have been developing that concept here. So the fact that that policy arrived and landed and got developed in Indonesia is no accident, because there's a need for that concept. And you go anywhere in Java, it's the desa kota condition, is the agropolitan condition. The third one, which is not so well known, is Minapolitan. And as I understand, that was developed in Indonesia. And the very modest one I want to propose is called Rimbapolitan. And Rimbapolitan would be a nice complement, I think, to Forest City. The main difference is because it comes from Indonesia. And I appreciate how you framed your proposal about local and the contradiction of the local. I don't have the quote with me, but there are some English explorers who came to Indonesia in the 1800s around the time of Raffles, and they described arriving in Sumatra, and they described what they felt was one of the largest populated cities in the world at the time, but they couldn't see anybody because they was in the forest. So there's already a concept of the forest in Indonesia, and Indonesia is has a long history of living with the forest and in the forest. So my proposal is something called Rimbapolitan. I don't know if that works or not. I'll give you one last little sidebar. There's another alternative idea that we had to capture the idea that we already live in forests. Is the idea of Wono. If you're from Java, you will know Wonogiri and Wonosari. And does anybody know what Wono means? Exactly. So I felt, with my own aesthetic decision, Wonopolitan does not sound so good. But there's also an interesting fact. Wonogiri, Wonosari, they're also relatively poor areas, right? So that's because they remain their vestige. And also quite Javanese-centric. But Rimbapolitan is Austronesian, Minapolitan is Sanskrit, Agropolitan is Greek, Metropolitan is Greek. So I think it'd be really nice to kind of try and get hold of Rimbapolitan as an indigenous, but complexly local, to reflect on Ibu Mirna's point. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Steven. You did answer the question, surprisingly. Yes. But allow me to kind of summarize, or at least to try and distill, because the actual answer is complex and kind of deeply embedded in what you're saying. If I understand correctly, the model is fraught because these cities will be part of the global network. They will be connecting just to have the cheese, but also with airlines, with boats, etc. So infrastructure, tangible or not, will make IKN part of the global economy. That flies in the face of creating autarkic, fully mandiri, fully independent environments. In essence, you're saying that what I also believe, the new town model is an impossibility. it relies heavily on this idea of independence and a green environment that it doesn't sort of parasitically consume.
Yeah, thanks for giving me another opportunity to close this. So the reason why it's not just an aesthetic argument to say that calling something rimba-politan is a nice historical dimension. It brings it back into the tradition of urbanism that already exists in Indonesia. The forest is already a highly networked condition anyway, so there's a very beautiful way in which we could reclaim that idea. But for me, it also helps us activate the romanticism of the forest in a slightly more technical way. So for me, Forest City is a bit too, it's too, in a way, easy to kind of imagine our way into that. Whereas I think we could claim that and develop it much more sort of locally. And for me, who's trained really as an architect, but more and more has been working in the world with data scientists, I think we have the opportunity to make a kind of credible case for the new town that has to be kind of networked, that claims a certain, that is very precise about the local responsibility. How much resource can we generate locally, and how much resource do we import? I'm not saying my steaks are from Australia and my cheese is from the Netherlands, but I need to be understanding what is the mix. And then the responsibility, I think, is not fully autonomous, but it's quasi-autonomous, or we understand where the autonomy might lie, and we can calculate that inside a more romantic framework, I would admit.
Right. Well, happy to hear that it is indeed what you're describing, a radical new model that is needed, which really very comfortably brings me to you, Bobby. You are the expert on, if I may say so, on Indonesian urbanism. You've wrote the tome that captures everything and anything. That allows me to ask you, is IKN, the way we've conceived it now, is it sufficiently radical? Is it sufficiently different from the existing urbanism that we know, either here in Indonesia, I would go so far as to say globally, to be that radical response that Pak Steven describes, to be that semi-autarkic environment? Is it really this new dream?
Well, maybe my response not really answering your question, especially in relate to the forest city, but my concern has been on the informality of the urbanism in Indonesia. We know that the people who learn about Indonesian urbanism, we always talk about urban dualism, pseudo-urbanism, over-urbanism, and so on and so forth, which then relate to the issue of formality, informality and formal sector, to sites, which also somehow relates each other very, very synergistically. Pak Bambang very knows about informality, since your books also covering the whole informal aspect of the cities in not only Asia, right? Asia, not Indonesia, but Asia. So the question to me when talking about IKN, which is totally blueprint types of planning, where the planner and architects and urban designer totally design as what they dream about the IKN. So again, the question, even in the next 20 years, is on how to integrate the informality. I always ask to my student a simple question on whether informality in many aspects of urbanism in Indonesia is temporary or permanent solution. And it's kind of interesting question. But another issue, perhaps also interesting, on how to integrate, because we know, right? There's always cost and benefit of informality as well as in illegality. But then also there's some cost of formalizing the informal sector or legalizing the informal sector. So still so many questions on, yes, you are talking about 2 million people, middle class people, government offices and so on, living in a very totally new city. But I'm very much sure that in the next 20 years, this 22 million people will then follow by perhaps even more than 2 million people. Today, 9% of Indonesians still living in under poverty line, which means that we are talking more than 25 million people living in below poverty line, not to mention millions of people who are living slightly above the poverty line. So any development activities in any part of Indonesia, I'm sure will be then really affecting this, the poor people and the vulnerable group of people to try to scratch, to try to tap also this kind of investment, any investment. So we should not thinking only about 2 million people design largely in so many interesting design projects. But what are then, if the 2 million people of middle class then attract even more than 2 million people in surrounding area? So again, my concern has been on informality, the incremental nature of Indonesian city, then the organic nature, which then relate to actually also the issue of livability. Because we learn from Indonesian urbanism, the livability of urban cities in Indonesia is really because of this blend, very interesting mix between formal and informal sector. The kampong, for example, in terms of housing, which also not only, which perhaps can be related to your idea of minopolitan, agropolitan, urban farming, this kind of things. But kampong is already a very productive area and very livable, hosting at least 2/3 of urban residents in Indonesia. So that's my first concern.
I'm sufficiently not dialectic enough, which is very unusual for me. I totally agree with you, and I want to push you to emphasize that point much stronger. I very much believe in informality as being a backbone of this city. Unfortunately, only a few of the projects in the competition kind of touch upon it, and nobody fully embraced this idea. So my follow-up question then becomes, how do you kind of foster, nurture in that harsh environment? Because let's be honest, it is a harsh environment. How do you foster informality, which I do believe will safeguard Nusantara even when times are tough?
As I mentioned before, the informality itself also has a lot of problems. Yeah, I mean, people are saying that informality also related to the substandard of all aspects of the life, yeah? The environmental condition, economic condition, and so on and so forth. So yes, we are talking about informality, but at the same time, we also have to think on how to transfer this informality into somehow a formality. Yeah? So transferring is kind of a perhaps dynamic process. Maybe not 100% of informal sector can be transferred, or 100% of people engaged in informal sector can be support and transform into formal sector. But maybe a little by little, yeah. So we need to have a very good strategy roadmap, because it's also we know that at our long-term planning RPCP 2045, we agreed to have a zero poverty in 2045 in Indonesian mass. So this kind of formalizing the informal sector should be in line with the macro complex effort in reducing poverty into zero poverty line in 2045. So we are talking about 20 years of transformation process, yeah? Not just physical, but a transformation process on how to bring more than 20 million people in Indonesia living in a better life. That's perhaps, and while at the same time also still have some informality, but not in terms of economy, informality in terms of the culture, informality in terms of a new style of providing service and goods and services. Yeah, so a new types of informality which not always relate to the poverty and vulnerability. That's perhaps will be interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I could not agree more. Again, I try not to, but this is what we've noticed in China. They've been able to lift these 850 million people out of poverty, but all informality was almost all was kind of erased off the map. Your answer also to me really feeds beautifully in the previous issue of the new town. This is where the new town tends to fail, and maybe it can help save it. We're going to try to do something very difficult for me, certainly. We're going to do multimedia and reach out to Pumia. Can you hear us?
Yes, Pak, I can hear you.
That's wonderful. Have you been able to follow the discussion so far?
Yes, some, Pak, some of the discussion.
So the big topic we've kind of sidetracked is where you really reign supreme, and that's the issue of policy, because it's difficult and it's often it's not the most enjoyable process. In the case of IKN, which we've positioned as an evolutionary environment that is evolving, what this competition proposed was the idea of also evolving policies. Is that something you adhere to, and how would we see that enacted?
Yeah. Yes, Pak. The main point is what I understand, yeah, from Pak Bambang explanation when I joined OIKN. That here in OIKN we need to be creative, Pak. We are so we need to follow our national regulation, but here in OIKN we need to change and adapt the regulation here and there. Because the target for the future IKN is has been set up, and the target is quite unique, different from other areas in Indonesia. So we need to really understand the gap of those regulation that has been set up by the national government, and then we need to make something better here in IKN. For instance, all administrative area in Indonesia, they all have this detailed spatial plan. But then in IKN, we develop one more regulation here. We call it OIKN Regulation number 6, 2024. It is on dynamic detailed spatial plan. Why we need this regulation? Because we are not building IKN alone. There are stakeholders, just like what Bu Mirna said, who assist the development of IKN, who assist reforestation, and this new regulation opens up the possibility for them to propose minor changes to our current detailed spatial plan, so that we can ensure the investment coming in to IKN, but also it will provide significant benefits for public and also for the development of Nusantara itself. But then the question is on the transparency. To ensure this transparency, all those proposed minor changes is going through a thorough analysis, and in the end, they are all published in our One Map Nusantara. So Pak Bambang, I want to report to you that One Map Nusantara is online now. It can be accessed by public. It is a web-based GIS platform that can provide real-time insight into zoning, urban design, also what type of infrastructures that are built in the field and also investment location. So all this analysis on the proposal, on the minor change proposal, is to ensure that future development is sustainable and also benefit local communities and also future residents of Nusantara. And echoing what has been said in the discussion, we also hope this dynamic detail spatial plan will be one of exportable knowledge from IKN to other areas in Indonesia. So I hope that explanation answer your question.
Very much. Yeah, it does. The word dynamic here carries a lot of weight. I believe in that sense, IKN is a beautiful experiment that you couldn't apply to an entire nation. It's too complicated. But I am curious on a very practical level, the stakeholders you mentioned, that's a very diverse group. Some are involved long-term, others are in flux, come in and leave again. How are you able to engage with all these diverse stakeholders to make that a reality?
Well, but maybe in total we can divide this area of IKN into 3 parts, Pak. The western part of IKN is the one that is Bu Mirna said before. It was production forest, yeah. It was production forest, and then the in the center we have hutan lindung.
Protected forest.
Yeah, protected forest. And the eastern part of IKN, it is a city, Pak. I mean, we have desa, kelurahan. It is existing settlement in those areas. So we need to have different approach for the western part of IKN. We have all not have, yeah. We have the land. Most of the land is assigned by Ministry of Finance to us, Pak. So the land belong to us. So there we treat it like a green field. So we ask investors or contributors to help us developing those areas. So we propose to use this dynamic detail spatial plan, for instance, yeah, in those areas. But for the eastern part of the area of IKN area, we propose to have this revitalization of old area or existing cities, yeah, existing desa or kelurahan in those areas. So we can invite other stakeholders to contribute to the revitalization. We can use other techniques that has been applied in other area in Indonesia. So I mean, different part of IKN will promote different type of development in the future. And also different stakeholders. Sorry.
Right. It raises several interesting questions. I want to pose only one to you. This idea of ownership. Of course, it allows you to operate very quickly if you own the land, again, like China has, and you can make big, bold gestures. It can work against you in the future when you want the local communities to take ownership, literally and figuratively, in order to become the real stakeholders, the real guardians of the land and of the space. So is there a transition, or are there forms of privatization that are incorporated in this process? Is it again an evolutionary kind of unfolding towards a more private landscape?
Well, in the western part of IKN, I mean the land is belong to the government part. So the private sector, they can own the title, but above the land title belong to the government. And I mean, the scheme is not only for this land title or ownership of the title, but we also open for apa ya Bu Mirna ya, skema pemanfaatan, what is it like?
Beneficiaries. Scheme of beneficiaries.
Yeah, joint scheme to use the land. So it will be done by IKN and also other people who are interested in developing the area. So both are possible for the western part of IKN, but for the eastern part of IKN, we release permits. So if the people or stakeholders want to build something, they need to apply to us. So we'll release the permit, whether or not they can or cannot use the land according to what they propose. So we really need to ensure that what will be built in those areas is in accordance with our spatial plan, Pak.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's very clear. In fact, that was more clear for me than the people here in the room. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you.
It also really sets the stage for the final panelist. I'd like to ask a specific question to, but then please prepare any questions for the audience. Time is a little bit, we're running a little bit late, but we really want to make this into an interactive event and get everybody's take and questions as well. Yeah, as mentioned, there have been throughout the discussion several mentionings of your name, of yours, because at the end of the day, it is about money, and there has been a shift, if you agree, from, let's say, the hope of global capital being drawn to IKN towards more a local capital, local streams. Personally, I'm quite optimistic about that. You get a different city, a slower city, maybe a more fine-grained city, or am I way too optimistic?
Yeah, thank you very much, Neville. Thanks for bringing this amazing group of people around the table, which I've had the pleasure to work with over the past decades. Actually, I think, Bobby, we were actually 25 years ago were already doing things. So indeed, in that way, Nusantara is really, of course, a planner's dream. Yeah, do something differently. Really put something together, as Pa Steven also said, this new town development, and do it differently. And we are forced to do it differently because of the circumstances of being so close to one of the three big hearts of this planet. Yeah, so you have Central Africa, Congo, you have the Amazon, and then you have Kalimantan. So as Ibu Mirna always tells us, the sensitivities, the ecological sensitivities of where we're trying to build this city is really, that needs to be front and center of our considerations. At the same time, I really like this hope of the city being able to revitalize the forest again, because of course, where it's being built, we have had palm oil plantations, we've had forest plantations, and we had mining. So this concept of regenerative urbanism, so using a city to regenerate, not just revitalize, but really regenerate the Central Kalimantan, I think is not just a wonderful concept, and it feeds also into this Rimba urbanism, which Steven talked about, but it's also a possible source of financing, because as we all know, when it comes down to attracting international financing, carbon financing is really something which is very, very important. And Indonesia is really finalizing its regulations to allow for that money to come in. With respect to your question, is it bad that we don't have massive investment streams from abroad going into Nusantara at this moment? I think it's not really. This has to be Indonesia's experiment also, yeah? It has to be owned by Indonesia. And if indeed, for as an example, there would be heavy investment by one particular financier, this would not be really fitting into the picture of having Indonesia at the forefront of this. So I'm not too worried about it. My key hobby horse in this whole discussion about Nusantara, and Pak Bambang knows this very well, and we've been working on this together with Safia from ARUP, who is also in the room here, is for investors to come into Nusantara, you need people to move to Nusantara. And there's two ways. I have kids also growing up, and there's two ways of manipulating your kid. That is, on the one side, a carrot. Come, I'll give you this in case you do this, yeah? Or as a stick, if you don't do this, you don't get that. So normally the carrot works better than the stick. And what is the carrot? What makes Stephen, who said he loves Jakarta, what makes him move to Nusantara? If it's just a artificial, well-designed city, probably Stephen will not be very much liking it, because it's exactly what Bobby mentioned. We will be missing that informal angle of what makes Indonesian cities great, yeah, what makes Indonesian cities interesting. So capturing the informality, capturing the true nature of an Indonesian messy city in a new town is going to be very, very exciting. And for that, of course, we said, so you have to go beyond livability and beyond creating wonderful buildings and paths you can cycle. And no, you have to go beyond, and you need to go beyond. And that is then that concept of lovability. What makes somebody love a city? What makes somebody feel a connection, a community? What makes he or she want to move that? Because without people moving, either by force, when the government tells the civil servants, or by the carrot, by wanting to go there. And I think, so the moment that Ibu Mia and the others in Nusantara Capital Authority are able to accommodate that informality and are able to make it a place which is wonderful to live in for both elderly as well as young people, and families with kids, that will attract the people to move there, and that will also attract in the private sector financing. And finally, if that gets traction, I'm sure that also international financing will come in. But now it's really the question on movement of people and what's the carrot and the stick for them. Thanks.
I know what lures Pak Steven to IKN. It's clean air, no machete, no traffic, and good coffee. I think if you... all right, fine. That's what would attract me to move to IKN, if I have those aspects. Interestingly, those are things that we as designers, planners can achieve. That's the easy part. My concern in your description is more, can we achieve the critical mass? Can we somehow allow IKN to evolve and mature in a way and long enough that it achieves that critical mass so it can actually survive on its own? That is, do you see that break-even point anytime soon?
So there's a saying, of course, Rome wasn't built in a day also, yeah? So when is Nusantara mature enough to stand on its own legs? And that dynamics, because if you look at a city like Jakarta, I mean, how much of here is financed by the public sector versus the investment in real estate, which is done by the private sector? This will still take quite a while, absolutely. But that's okay. What, as the public sector, it's about, in terms of planning and in terms of construction, be very strategic in what you build, which would then be later filled in by the private sector. I think, indeed, this is a planned city, and almost like Ibu Mena was talking about the migrant communities who were coming to the area. At some point, indeed, the government will need to say, yes, we are now going to be seriously in a planned way encourage people with incentives to come there. The private sector incentives, by the way, for Nusantara are still incredibly unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, in terms of tax and super tax and double, triple tax credits and so on, you can get even with respect to immigration rules and so on, and policies. So I think what has been achieved in the relatively short time, we now have a bit of a slowdown on that, and I think that is okay. It's good for us to reset, you know, for the government to rethink about what are the real priorities, but it will take time, and that to some extent is also okay, because some of these wonderful ideas, for example, which have come out of this particular competition, yeah, those have not been yet accommodated. Yeah, only a small percentage of the entire city has been constructed now. There's so much space still to do good things and to do and to think ahead. But indeed, there needs to be dynamics, and it's great to see. I mean, for me, the highlight of Nusantara at the moment is not so much the presidential palace. It's actually the Excelsior coffee shop, which is on the other side of the palace, which overlooks the palace. Because in that Excelsior coffee shop is where everybody comes together and hangs out, and that is, of course, part and parcel of the Indonesian culture. I'm not sure if that is part Stevens coffee, but it's really that kind of. I really hope that kind of elements are coming in soon. Yeah.
Thank you. I like that. Please.
Well, the question remind me, Pak Bambang, just 1 month, 2 weeks before Prabowo was inaugurated as president, we were discussing on whether he will sign, or Jokowi or Prabowo will sign a letter or Kepres to move, to formally, legally move the central government to that. And so far, Prabowo always say that 2028, where when the Gedung DPR and MPR finish, then as well as when the whole Prabowo program, short-term program accomplished, then he may sign very Saktio letter, as you mentioned, to force civil servant to move there, and then Excelsior will then follow that civil servant, at least 100,000 something, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, stick and carrot is, I think, what we need. Allow me to ask a question to everybody on the table, and Bumia as well online. And meanwhile, that gives the audience a chance to maybe formulate any questions they might have. Please stand up, we'll find you with the mic. Thinking long term, I know as planners, especially people actively engage with IKN on a daily basis, they are in the trenches. They are working hard to make it a reality and dealing with day-to-day problems. Does it help to kind of think long term, plan long term, have these big visions for 2045? Is that what can push it over that critical point? My implicit answer is obviously yes, and that also goes to Bumia. I hope more planners with this spectacular background that we've seen today are involved on a daily basis with IKN. But does it really help the long-term vision, Pak Bambang? Is it actually inspiring people? Is it engaging people? Or is it just other urban planners who are excited about thinking about cities?
Yeah, I think I don't have an answer on that. Is this urbanotopia? Some of the urban planner has some utopia things. We are talking about Wanapolitan, or we call it the forestopolis, forest in the polis, forestopolis, right? Is it too good to be true for the 2045? I don't know. I mean, this is a question that we as academics love to do some research more, right? Because with that, maybe there's new concept about this one. But let me also point out one thing, Pak Neville. I'm a bit disturbed if we assume that the urban citizen in IKN will be a middle class, because this city must be inclusive city. We must design a city in such a way so that from the top to the bottom, we'll be living there. What I'm afraid right now, and I'm sharing this one also in one of my article in Compass, that we are going to see a city with the two faces. In fact, right now we have one city with the two faces. There's modern part, about 1,000 hectares. We call it KIPP, Kawasan Inti Pusat Pemerintahan. And there is a kampung called the Kecamatan Sepaku that now is still growing, a bit uncontrolled. Yeah. So this is a classic example of cities in Java or in the developing countries. One city with the two faces, formal and informal, and so on and so forth. So how can we address this one? Is it going to be like this for the future? Are we going to have a modern part of the informal settlement? I call it informal settlement in the Kecamatan Sepaku, yeah, in the future. Or are we going to have all the modern city? But what I'm afraid that we are following the Brasilia mistake.
Yes.
You have a very modern city, although auto-oriented city, yeah. But you have a lot of informality. In fact, the largest favela in Brazil right now is not in Sao Paulo, it's not in Rio de Janeiro, but now is in Brasilia. In the satellite cities of Brasilia. I came there about a couple months ago, and then I witnessed it. Even they are not allowing me to go into the favela, but it's too dangerous, they said. So going back to your question, is this something that we are doing a lot of critical thinking for the future, so that we are going to have at the latest a new concept perhaps in the urban planning theory about how the cities will be developed in the future with all the smart things, AI, Internet of Things, sky taxi that will be applied to the IKN. On the other hand, we still have to preserve the local community, the local wisdom and others, and how we strike the balance of all those concepts that maybe never in the history of theoretical urban planning we have this kind of situation. I stopped it.
No, you raise a great point, and it's an important point that we've skipped the idea of social resilience. I would call the phenomenon you describe as a split city. The problem with that is, can we, I'd like to pose it to you actually, Stephen, can we as planners somehow address this issue, or are we falling into our own trap that we can deal with these social issues that maybe are far beyond our control?
Just to make a couple of corrections from my part. So we've modeled a middle-class population in IKN. That's just a theoretical, and that modeling that middle class pushes up the ecological footprint way beyond what the region can handle. So we know that that's not a good, it's already demonstrating what a bad decision that would be, or a bad outcome that would be. So a much more balanced and typical Indonesian city, much more sort of integrated city, would in fact reduce the ecological footprint. But again, the flip side of that argument, and here I'm going to use an anecdotal story. You mentioned sort of carrots and sticks and coffee as inducements and so on. So the middle class carrot is the coffee shop, right? And yes, I would put myself in that story. But there's a former governor of Jakarta used to use this phrase, which I think you all know, which is ada gula, ada semut. And he used it, I think, in a very patronizing way, but a real way. And what he meant was just the vast attraction and migration to Jakarta. And that's not any kind of migration. It's not middle class, high value job migration. This is just people coming from the countryside. And I think there's another dimension to IKN that is, again, it's discussed a little bit in urbanization circles, is the urbanization trigger. I'll give you one other example I know about very well. Singapore manages the urbanization trigger because the border of Singapore is a national border. Indonesia, it's interesting that we're talking about we need to get people to go there, but actually I can well imagine a scenario in which there's an influx of people in that old Sutioso sort of model. So the triggering of organic migration to IKN is probably a major, I think, should be a major consideration. Maybe not IKN itself, but Balikpapan and Samarinda and Penajam and all the areas around it. So there's a kind of another threat, and that would be again a terrible outcome of a split or a splintered kind of city, which doesn't have that kind of proper integration of the authentic Indonesian city as I see it.
Thank you, Pak Steven. I really want to solicit some questions from the audience. Please, Khalil. I knew it would be you. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Pak Neville. And I think it's a great discussion that we are having in the past 2 hours. Let me introduce myself. I'm a regenerative development consultant. And I wish to give a bit of focus here to what Bu Mirna discussed earlier in the discussion here, which is on the economic merits of developing the forest city. And you mentioned earlier here that you said about what's going to happen to the local communities when IKN has been built. And I also heard about the worries here of Pak Bambang also about the overgrowing developments, the informalities that happened. And my personal fear is one, that the whole formalization here, that they lost their home, they lost their land, and basically, I hope that I'm not wrong here. I'm not mishearing things. I say, why we should only offer just mere jobs as compensation, and especially when we're losing jobs, especially manufacturing jobs, at an alarming rate all across the country, and that is only on the optimistic rate. Why not we actually develop a model that actually gives them a little bit of equity as compensation to their land loss? So let's say that we introduce new technology, for example here, waste to energy technology implemented in IKN, and profits would instead be redistributed to communities and not just be for the profit for local government. Is it possible that the regulations, the environment in the local communities and in the business community can make that a reality? Thank you.
Maybe to summarize, Bu Mirna, eco-tech as the new backbone of IKN. Is that very Chinese again? Is that a future you see that is viable? Thank you, Khalil.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes, I think I am interested to respond first for your first impressions about what's basically the economic merit of the forest city. I think we introduced for all the stakeholders in IKN that we're talking about forests in the future, where the environmental services will be the backbone, and perhaps a carbon trading also. Now we are calculating about the potential of the carbon in IKN, and we also introduced about the ecotourism, that using the landscape of the forest. So that is the answer if you're asking about the economic merit. So we do not want to make the project of the forest city is like the burden for everyone, like happens for several decades in Indonesia. When we talk about the forest, everyone also talking, oh, this is not the benefit, this is the burden. And the second one about you mentioned about the eco-technology. Yes, that could be also the solution. If I can make an example that last year, another department of or IKN trying to develop what they call as the green village, where the waste management there is like to introduce the people to observe about their environment, to observe about the potential of the forest fire, etc. So we are trying to develop in the very micro level about the models that can be integrate the idea of the environmental issues into the economic solution for the people. And if I can also respond about the discussions earlier about the role of the urban planner, I think outside KIPP, there are a lot of issues that need the help of the urban planner. Ibu Mia and team now developing the design of the Sepaku starting from the web market of Sepaku. And if I'm not mistaken, that there are also a lot of discussion with the urban planners, etc. So I think we need to work together from the point of view of KIPP and also in the surrounding of KIPP. And then last one about the inclusivity and also about the informality. Under our department, we have the Directorate of the Food Security. Yeah, we talk with the thousands of local farmers in IKN. The question is, what would be the best role that the existing local farmers can contribute to IKN? And we ask them, what would you be in the future? Do you still want to be a farmer, or you want to change to be another role? And they said that we do not have any option. We just want to be a farmer. Okay, right. If you want to be a farmer, let's start to be farmer in the future. We introduce with the technology, and right now we are also thinking about having is like the farmers market in KIPP, where we can bring these local farmers to get involved in the economic activity. Perhaps you can say that informality, but we need to, to open space for these very important stakeholders to be also part of the activity in IKN. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we can invite Bumi also.
Yeah, that's my next step. That's a great answer. Actually, it's a potentially very good answer for here in the Dutch embassy. Agro-tech, waste management, agro-tech is something we're rather good at. You have the mic, if you please. Maybe both of you could answer. Provoost, let we start with Bumia. Yeah.
Sorry, the same question?
Yes, please.
Okay. The question is, yes, we have this long-term vision for IKN, and I remember, when Pak Bambang assemble all the people, from different background to join IKN. Not only urban planner are joining, Pak, but we also have economists, regional economists, and also regional planners. So building IKN is not only building the city. We are building the new growth center in the central of Kalimantan. In the central of Indonesia. That is why all the knowledge are combined here in IKN. So if we look at the KPI for IKN itself, it's not only for the city, but also for the future growth center in Indonesia. But in IKN, we won't have this manufacturing center, but just outside IKN, we will have that in the future. We design at least now 2 economic zone near IKN that I think they can also answer the last question from the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bumia. That's very convincing. Unfortunately, we're going to the very last question of this debate.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Austin. I'm one of the Provoost students. I just want to talk about a bit different. Maybe it's kind of like the anthropology side. I'm not an anthropologist, of course, and I'm not a sociologist, but I want to talk about how jungle tribe in Indonesia develop their cities, like Dayak or Asmat or Anak Dalam tribe or Bajo tribe even, and how they live in their city inside the jungle or maybe inside the sea as well. So is there any study for our urban and regional planning to comprehend, to learn from them how to maybe waste management or food and livestock management or even settlement management there? Because I believe they have so many things to learn from them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Yeah, there is one entry in the competition that specifically focuses on Dayak communities and how they live and how it becomes the backbone. I know several people here who can answer. I want to make it open for everybody, but also use it as an opportunity for some closing thoughts. Can be one sentence, can be two. Maybe we start with you, Bobby.
Well, I think what we missed in our discussion is on the regional level, talking about, and let's talk about Kalimantan or Borneo as the whole, yeah. Especially when you mentioned about Rimba Politan. It's not about IKN and surrounding, but also the whole region of Kalimantan, because the environmental problem in Kalimantan is not only happen in this hotspot IKN, but as you mentioned, the illegal logging, the mining, the kelapa sawit everywhere in Kalimantan. That's something that we have to consider. Solving only the IKN and surrounding, which is only contribute to maybe less than 5% of the total Borneo, is not really a good thing. So we have to talk it at the regional level. And last time, Pak Bambang, yeah, we were talking about the sustainable regional corridor linking, for example, Samarinda, IKN, and Balikpapan. I was proposing at the time the Nusa Banda, Nusantara, Balikpapan, and Samarinda corridor. Yeah? We may also mix with Rimba Politan of Sum. Nusa Banda, yeah, Rimba Politan, Nusa Banda, and the whole Kalimantan. That's one thing. The whole regional issue should be solved, yeah, and we cannot really solve IKN without any thinking on the whole Borneo.
Thank you, Buck.
We go around the circle. The core expertise that I think is around the table and in the room is that we are all very good at handling contradictions, and that's really essential. And if I'm teaching, when I teach urban design students, it's never trying to say, well, pick the solution. It's always somewhere in here, in the mix between these contradictions, is where you might approach this issue. So it's never simply local knowledge that's been lost and we must recover it. It's that local knowledge that somehow can hybridize with contemporary conditions. And again, I come back to Ibu Mirna's position is very clear on that. But I might add one other condition is that there's a lot of research now to say that universalizing, instrumentalizing, engineered, technical, centralized knowledge around cities is becoming traded more and more. There's more and more equality around the world. That's producing higher standards of living, higher integration, more systems-based. But it's also reducing resilience, because if something goes wrong with that integrated system, we have little capacity to diversify those conditions. So having diversity in which local knowledges remain having a role, I think is really essential. So for me, the romance of the local plus the technical capacities of the Singapores, of the Silicon Valleys is really essential. So yes, Dayak, but Dayak and Silicon Valley, I think, would be my sort of image.
That's a lovely image. Umia, your screen is positioned exactly between Pak Steven and Pak Joris. So it's in the order. If you have a closing remark, that would be wonderful.
Okay, my closing remarks is an invitation actually. we invite not only investors or contributors to IKN, but we also invite innovative thinkers and innovative policymakers. So hopefully from this forum, we can have more new thinking for IKN, and younger generation are welcome to join us here in Nusantara. I'm here in Nusantara, actually, in our new office. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much from my side. I also think that as an international, so besides what Ibu Mia mentioned, you know, Nusantara as a living lab for innovation, for doing things differently. I think as an international community, not just of development partners and financiers and university, you know, this is an Indonesian process of developing this new capital, and having supporters from around the world is really, you know, important to bring in other ideas, bring in new ideas. But in the end, it has to be owned by Indonesia and the government of Indonesia and the Indonesian people. And I really feel, having been privileged to be part of this on the sidelines, and I do hope and believe that everybody is looking at this from around the world critically, but also with great interest, because the potential of doing something and learning from all these lessons from which, you know, from the past, from other new cities, from our Indonesian cities as we have them now, yeah, it's really an amazing opportunity. So yeah, let's hope to grab that opportunity. And maybe it's not in the next, you know, 5-10 years. It will take longer, but that's fine. That's fine. There's wonderful generations of people who have been involved in this particular competition and who have shared their knowledge. So passing on the baton on this is not bad. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, well said. And indeed, the winning team is British-Indonesian, a very interesting hybrid.
Yeah, very short. IKN is about transformation. I think all my colleagues in the authority knows that kind of rule of thumbs. Is it going to be a lifestyle changes like you mentioned, Neville, in the beginning of, you know, when we asked the audience to vote something? Maybe yes. Can the design dictate the changes? Maybe yes, maybe no. We don't know. But I'm going back to Pak Joris' point that 9 months ago when we met Neville, I stressed on the word living lab. So let's treat this one as a living lab. It will be a knowledge journey for all of us. And I would like to invite all of us to be part of that kind of journey. Yeah, thank you.
I think a transdisciplinarity is the most suitable approach in doing the urban design, in the policy making, in the city management, and anything where different disciplines of science and also communication and collaboration between academicians, government officials, NGOs, private sectors, and also the local communities. So when we can make it happen in a very concrete project of the design of the certain parts of IKN, it would be wonderful. So I do hope that for the next competition, if there is, so you do not just involve the urban planners, but also invite other discipline, perhaps urban anthropologists and artists, perhaps. Yeah. So we need them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we need to make this as the closing also for our nice discussions. Before we end and hand it over to the representative from the embassy, I just want to add, I think there are two things I would like to highlight today. The first one, I make notes, and I think balanced and justice is a keywords that come into my mind by following all the discussions. We need the balance between nature and urbanizations. We need balance between formal and informal. And we need not only equality to address inequality, but we also need to maintain or to achieve the justice, the spatial justice. And with this, I think it's also important to make this not as the end of our thought. We need to think what next to be done. I'm happy to have a very positive closing remarks from all of the panelists, the invitations for us to learn from the journey and to invite all of us, including myself, to think it's not a matter of speed,